Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our Center Director, Dr. Maha Leia V. Ramago.
Good afternoon, everyone. Magandang hapon sa ating lahat. On behalf of SEAMEO INNOTECH, I warmly welcome you to today's session of the INNOTECH Seminar Series on Education, Innovation, and Technology. This session is made specially meaningful by the long-standing relationship between INNOTECH and the University of the Philippines. Over the years, the UP system has hosted INNOTECH, so we are sitting on UP land, okay, and has been part of the institutional environment in which the center continues to serve the education sector. Beyond this, UP has been a valued partner in advancing educational research, capacity building, policy dialogue, and reform initiatives that contribute to the continuing transformation of the Philippine education and beyond. It is therefore fitting that today's conversation is led by one of UP Diliman's distinguished leaders. Our topic today, Schools and Starts Up on Becoming an Innovation Nation, is both timely and relevant. According to the 2025 Global Innovation Index, the Philippines now ranks 50th out of 139 economies worldwide and third among lower middle income economies. At the same time, the World Economic Forum projects that 39% of the workers' core skills will change by 2030. So it is imperative for us to respond to this changing demand. These developments underscore the growing importance of innovation in education. Schools are called not only to prepare learners for future employment, but also to cultivate their capacity to generate ideas, solve real-world problems, and contribute meaningfully to their communities. This aligns closely with INNOTECH's vision of empowering learners to become the change makers of tomorrow and our mission to serve as a catalyst for innovation and technology in transforming education across Southeast Asia. We are honored to have with us today, this afternoon, Atty. Edgardo Carlo L. Vistan II, Chancellor of the University of the Philippines Diliman, who will share his perspective on leadership, higher education, startups, and innovation. His insights will help us explore how schools, universities, and innovation ecosystems can work together to prepare learners not only to adapt to change, but also to shape it. Through this meaningful discussion, may we deepen our understanding of how education can drive innovation and strengthen systems that are responsive to the demands of the future. Thank you all for joining us today, both on-site and online. And as I always end, together, let us drive innovation for education.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our distinguished guest speaker this afternoon, the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines Diliman, Atty. Edgardo Carlo L. Vistan II.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. So, schools and startups on becoming an innovation nation. The facts mentioned by the Center Director Maha earlier on our becoming 50th, around 50th in rank in terms of innovation in the global community, happened, I think, 1 or 2 years ago, and it was a big deal for the cabinet. So that shows us how, in the title of my presentation on becoming an innovation, it's not really a prescription. It's what we're trying to do actually. And my presentation this afternoon will be more of sharing what I've been seeing, especially recently, as an administrator, as a chancellor of UP Diliman. And also, it's based on, by the way, by recently, as in 2 weeks ago. There are certain developments I will tell you about. And also, my experience in life. No? You might be wondering why someone who took or who completed a degree in molecular biology and biotechnology became a lawyer. So that's part of the story, or maybe a symptom of our suppose, difficulties as a nation. So that's my objective here. The premise, without really questioning it anymore, no, and without me dwelling it, is because innovation is considered an essential driver of economic development. But I would say we should focus more on sustainable economic development nowadays. So the Philippines has not been lacking, I would say, in terms of trying or efforts. There are various government programs aimed at promoting innovation, various incentives for industries, investors, ever since the turn of the millennium. And this is where I would like to emphasize or expand on more during this afternoon, the expansion of the talent pool. Okay? So definitely for more than half a century now, there has been a focus on STEM-heavy education. It wasn't even called STEM yet at that time, but definitely the Philippines has created that space for such kind of education. 60 years ago, the pioneer for this, and at least in the high school level, is the Philippine Science High School, which I am a part of. That's why I also had to take, at least during my time, it was compulsory. I had to take a science degree, which was the molecular biology and biotechnology. 60 years running now from a single campus nearby near Trinoma, Agham Road, we call it. Now it's Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago Road. It has become at least 16 to 17 more Philippine Science High School campus today, with more to come. Apparently, so that's part of the development, part of the developments I want to be sharing with you. I was in Congress 2 weeks ago, so the Science and Technology Committee had a hearing. Okay, so there's an objective now to have 2 Philippine Science High School campuses per region. Okay. And that's really a lot. And congressmen are rushing to convince the Philippine Science High School system to place that campus in their localities, attracting them with donated property and all that. So I don't envy their position of trying to decide where. But definitely, for some reason, I'm not sure why, there's a very strong push to establish these science high schools all over the country. We could just surmise that it's still a continuation of our drive to really be, in my terms, an innovation nation. A nation led by R&D, innovation, that would ideally drive our economy, something which we have not yet been able to really produce or come up with despite the 60 years of trying. Beyond the PSHS system, and this is a lot more, in each many LGUs, I wouldn't say in each, but in many LGUs all over the country, there are now local science high schools. Okay, so the Philippine Science High School system is under the Department of Science and Technology. These local science high schools are under the DepEd. Okay, and just for example, I was just in the hometown of my wife in Camarines Sur last week in Iriga. They had a newly created, maybe just 2 years or 3 years, Iriga Science High School. So from an alumni of the Philippine Science High School, where we were like a limited group of people back then, I really wonder, no? And perhaps it's just really the sign or what our times now need of our younger generations, or at least what the policies of the government, the country has produced. No? Is this inclination to really establish STEM education in the high school, at the very least at the high school level. But there's more. Oh wait, sorry. Okay. So sorry, it's in the slide. So recently also, even the DepEd has established or has created parameters or standards for STEM heavy. This is my word, so it's not what STEM DepEd calls it. STEM heavy basic elementary education. Okay, not as much as in the high school level. By the way, when you say science high school, it's really almost all sciences and a few humanities, the required humanities, but very, I would say, minimal compared to other high schools. But for the DepEd, it's not as much. They're just sort of introducing STEM to younger Filipinos. Okay. But despite this clear drive to expand the talent pool, as the Philippine Science High School leadership would call it, building a critical mass of STEM professionals, we have these problems. Okay? I just say it nicely, no? Filipino talent going global. What would once be called brain drain. No? But I've since, in UP especially, this is a hot, well, at least during my time, this is a very hot in terms of temper topic. Why do Filipinos go abroad and they study here, and even UP scholars, and then go abroad? But I think another way of seeing it is we're educating the global workforce. And in a very interconnected world, I think there's some truth to that, and it's not really all that bad, I would say. But definitely, the investment in terms of government funds that goes to STEM professionals that go through our education system is not harnessed. No, I would say the country doesn't reap the benefits. And that's not entirely the fault, or that I wouldn't say it's the fault of the students. Okay. So for those who stay, not enough are in innovation ecosystems or in industry that are involved in R&D. As many become practicing professionals. So that's my story. I wanted to do biotech research. I didn't want to go abroad. So I became a lawyer, if that makes sense. But the thing is, at least during my time, the kind of research, the kind of R&D, I didn't want to become a doctor. And many in my high school and in the course that I took, molecular biology and biology also in general, would eventually end up becoming medical doctors. But I did not want that. But I did not have the opportunities at that time, this was in the late 90s, to do the R&D I was hoping to do. And recently, many of those who enter innovation ecosystems or industries lack the know-how for R&D. And this is the complaint to me of our industry partners. They have shared this to me as Chancellor. So we have a lot of industry partners who get our student interns in the hope that they'll hire them eventually. So they want graduate level knowledge or know-how, meaning masters in the engineering sciences. They can get that, but there's a shortage. They don't get enough. Like one electronics company said, "How many do you, I asked, how many do you need?" Maybe around 500 graduate level engineers in their production plant somewhere in the south, and they can't get it. And at the same time, most in the industry are not inclined to train our graduates to become the R&D or STEM professionals that they need. So what's the solution? They'll go somewhere else, perhaps. Along with, and of course there are other factors, high electricity rates, things like that. That will eventually push them to go elsewhere. And perhaps this is just my connecting things together. Because of those things, government is trying to produce more. We're not all of our graduates are staying. Let's just produce more, and hopefully we build that critical mass. I am assuming this is the strategy. So more STEM in school curricula. Recently, even in non-science high schools, STEM has become an option among other non-STEM options. So more opportunities to study in science high schools. The intention here, by the way, sorry, I assume I did not explain well. So in science high schools, at least during my time, if you're a scholar, you don't pay anything. And the trade-off or what the ask of the government is when you go to college, take a science or prescribed science and engineering courses. If not, they'll get the money back. During my time, but nowadays apparently it's not that anymore. Perhaps there are so many graduates of these systems, high school systems. I suppose it's the absorptive capacity of the higher education level that's failing. That's why they don't compel anymore that you finish a STEM degree. But still, there are a lot from science high schools that science high school graduates that we are producing nowadays. Definitely, maybe I would say 20-fold, maybe 20 to 30 times more than during my time. Beyond that, more you came from a science high school or not, will encourage you to take STEM degrees. The DOST provides scholarships. Okay. In fact, what happens sometimes or often is that an applicant for a DOST scholarship would get the scholarship, but would not pass, for example, our UPCAT, the degree he should be getting. So there's that disconnect. No? There's that disconnect. Or one way to analyze it or to see it is that the supply, no, the push for creating that critical mass is there, but some of the crucial parts, like for example the higher education system, is not responsive or lacks capacity. On that point, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3. In that Congressional Science and Technology Committee hearing, the reason why I was there is because there's a proposal to create something like the science PSHS at the higher education level for advanced science and technology education and innovation, research and development in innovation. So of course, universities like UP, why do you need more? Why do you need this new thing when we are actually UP? So, to be candid, is something like that across many fields, agriculture. Here we have in Diliman, we have engineering as our major contribution to that, and the basic sciences, biology, chemistry, environmental science. There's, of course, in the other UP campuses, there's agriculture, fisheries. So, just to a side story, UP is somewhat opposing it. I'm in the middle because who's pushing this is the PSHS system. It's even called the Philippine Science Institute, PSI. No? PSHS is called colloquially or PSI. PSI is essentially PSI, Philippine Science Institute. That's the new university level entity they're pushing for. Partly, it's to absorb their graduates because not all get into the STEM degrees that they should get, and they're producing more graduates, more than what UP can absorb. And matter of factly, without really bragging, still, I think UP is their preferred destination for STEM degrees, at least the PSHS graduates. So that is the response. So going back, these are the things, these are the um, outcomes of the effort for more than 50 years now. There's a perceived problem. No, we're not getting the dividends in terms of R&D and innovation and economic development, shall we say. So the response is this: more, 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 more. But will this be enough? So that, in effect, is the story behind how we are trying to become an innovation nation. Now I go into that part of schools and startups. I'll explain more later. So my question now is, will this be enough? Will more STEM graduates, STEM professionals be enough for the Philippines to be that innovation or R&D driven nation that it wants to be, and that we hope will drive our development moving forward. So for a larger perspective, no? So far we've been discussing in this academia more or less and government. But a third major actor in any innovation ecosystem, when I say ecosystems, basically, in this particular case, the Philippine context, no? Industry environment, the innovation space, to the extent that we have that. One, and I put it here, sort of emphasizing its importance and also maybe where we're lacking, I would say, in my personal opinion, industry. Of course, there are other actors, NGOs, financial institutions. Those are other actors in an innovation ecosystem. I'll explain more what I think of industry, my statement about the industry as an actor, at least in the Philippine setting, in the next few slides. So while we have improved our ranking in the innovation metric, we are perhaps just putting in not even half of the prescribed R&D investments from combined industry and government. I think it's 2% GDP. We're not even at 1% for a nation, for a developing nation. And this is the thing I want to emphasize really in my talk. You saw earlier the STEM. But innovation is not just about STEM. Okay. The non-STEM related capacities, I would say we are not developing in parallel enough. And perhaps that's what we should focus on moving forward. And also, at the government level, what is our innovation agenda? I don't see that right now. It seems to be scattered. We just want to invite as many investors as we can. I don't know what we want to do in terms of what particular industries we want to develop. And that's what I mean by having a strategic innovation agenda. And more on that. So we're behind, let's say. We can agree on that. The Philippines is behind other countries. We're just number 50. But I say, catching up. So we're behind. But catching up is not the only solution, I would say. We must be more strategic in our approach to becoming an innovation nation. Do we still participate in the semiconductor race? I think we're still trying to. But is that what will help us the most moving forward? And I would say there's a lot of fields open. There are a lot of open areas, fields in innovation, R&D industry that we can perhaps capitalize on, and not just try to catch up with established industries already, and perhaps we won't be as successful anymore in catching up. And whatever that agenda is should include all the inputs, all the views of the actors I mentioned earlier. So, having said that, I still believe, based on my experience, the schools will always be important in this, in achieving our aspirations, especially developing the needed capacities. But we must see, this second bullet point, a significant departure from the profession-oriented training in most academic institutions, my university included, I would say, and move towards an innovation-oriented formation of students. What's a profession-oriented training or system or environment? Diba, I'm not sure if the younger generations would relate, but at least during my time, they say people like me, the youth, should strive to become professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers. That title, that license. Okay. But we have, I suppose, so many of those. But the question, are we that innovation nation already that we want to be? So I emphasize here, innovation is a complex, multidisciplinary endeavor. It's not just about knowing science, technology, engineering. Of course, that's important. That's where the innovation will happen. But there's more to that. So the curriculum must be designed, I would say, my suggestion. Let's not just be content with having science-heavy or STEM-heavy curricula. Let's look at the management aspect, the economics aspect, the social science aspect, and there is to an innovation ecosystem. And this startup curriculum, just to outline my ideas here, could be incorporated as a set of electives or additional set of courses, not replacing the mandated curriculum. Something like a track, maybe an alternative STEM track at the high school level. I have to emphasize, starting young is important, I believe. The mindset. I think yung wanting to be professional, that starts young. You see your parents, doctors, lawyers, and that's what most children would want to become eventually. Modeling ba? Modeling after your elders. I prescribed in high school and college. I think this is the key. It can't just be in college. Nowadays, during my time, I was not yet an adult entering college. But now they're already adults. I think it would be too late. There should be already some inclination developed as early as high school. Okay, such a curriculum should be available to all students, not just those STEM inclined or taking STEM degrees. So let me explain this a bit. I did not really spell this out. Nowadays, innovation doesn't happen like a scientist or an engineer tinkering with things and there's an invention, there's a new development, there's a new idea confirmed, there's a new substance created. It's not just that. Actually, innovation has become so systematic already. That's why a typical industry R&D, an industry player, a company that invests in R&D, has so many engineers, scientists, because they're trying out all the permutations for example, improving the fuel consumption of a particular vehicle or improving the output of a particular battery. So many are working on those. and it's already programmed. No? But beyond that, there are non-STEM professionals helping them out. The most important for me is the business owner, if you ask me. The one who owns that business. As I said here, no, to have a viable innovation system, we need not just scientists and engineers. Equally important are people trained in business management, economics, and the social sciences. Why the social sciences? There are needs that are actually detected more, no, by professionals who are lawyers or who are sociologists, no? And that could lead to innovation. Even commercializing a product. There are some perspectives or considerations that are not just about the value of the product or the advantage given by the product. Much of the commercial viability of new products is affected by the habits, I would say, the habits of people, regardless of whether they're logical or even economical. No? Habits, what preferences, no? That for some of us may not really seem reasonable or may not add up. But that is what drives the market. That's what makes the demand, the preference of people. So that's the curriculum I'm trying to suggest or imagine should cover the role of STEM and non-STEM actors. That's why I was mentioning the innovation ecosystem. I was using that term. No? In established R&D enterprises or endeavors, there's a network of teams organized doing the work, and they're all collaborating, and they're not all engineers. Okay. In this kind of curriculum, ideally, real businesses, industry actors will be partners to provide real-world insights and also to provide the problems that has to be solved. So industry-driven innovation projects, that's what we're also trying to do at the university level. And this is really I suppose, one of the things, perhaps some of you will disagree, focusing on industry as an actor. We have big companies, conglomerates even, but very few of them, I would say, are R&D or innovation driven. No? They help the economy, definitely. They provide jobs. Okay? But there's minimal innovation happening in the typical Filipino business or company, even if they're the top businesses of the country. Sometimes, when I'm a bit angry or maybe not being too careful, I would say we're an economy of real estate developers. And all the jobs are coming from that. And now we have no more land to plant our rice. But that's just me. So, on the second bullet point, growing up, you would want to be a captain of industry. You want to be rich. You want to make it in the corporate world. But how? That's not. You can be rich really. Even in the Philippines, a lot of us have done well economically, climbing the corporate ladder. But has innovation happened? I would say very minimal or even close to nothing, because we have not built our industries that way. That's why the entrepreneurs of the future should be exposed or should be driven by the desire to be successful in business that is based on R&D and innovation. And I think that would happen eventually. There's no more land to build new condos in, to, to drive our economy. No more land to build new malls in. Of course, that's why they're probably reclaiming land in Manila. So these are the objectives: to build or to develop, to form innovation leaders. To be candid, even though I went through the Philippine Science High School system, school curricula, I did not think in this way. I was taught to become maybe more of a lab rat type of professional, even though I did not really want to become a doctor. I never really wanted to become a lawyer until a few months before I applied for law school. But eventually I said, it was only when I was already done with my degree that I thought that's where the space is really for entrepreneurs, innovation leaders, entrepreneurs who will do R&D, who will do, in my case, agri-biotech during my time. At least in the Philippines, that's a space where no one was really trying to go to, locally at least. But internationally, of course, very much so. But then there were no opportunities to really study that here, at least in Metro Manila. And actually, I knew the science. I did not know how to do the entrepreneurship part. So lost in that confusion, I decided I want to become a lawyer. But here I am. Even despite my being a lawyer, I've been asked to help out. My alma mater, PSHS, DOST, even the scientists and the scientific community in UP. There have been issues before that are legal in nature. So maybe I'm the non-STEM professional, that I've been talking about. But really, what I do, there's no innovation yet. Okay. I think I'm about to end. Okay. Just a recap. So having a strategic innovation agenda is a must. What does this mean? What industries do you want to develop, and where we still have a chance of making a real impact, or at least deriving a lot of benefit from economically? I say, that's what I've been saying in the past few slides, a culture change is needed that should start in schools. This is a different analogy, more for education in general. In a classroom, it's like an industrial setting. You're seated in desks like factory workers, supposedly. And at a higher level, you're being trained to be part of the workforce. That's not what will get us to being an innovation nation. We need risk takers. We need entrepreneurs. And that's not taught in schools, at least currently. But as an aside, I was pleasantly surprised to learn, because this was not happening during my time in the Philippine Science High School system. The last 5 years alone, for the PSHS system across all campuses produced around 700 intellectual property filings. Combined na yun. Patents, copyrights, industrial designs. 400 were granted. Seems a lot, but I don't know really where that's now. What's happening to that? And I asked the director, actually, we haven't really been able to commercialize many of them. So we have the brains to create those intellectual property, those inventions, those new processes. I think it's the industry side that we should be trying to develop more. Their appetite for investing in R&D because they have the money. Okay. That's why I also included financial institutions among the actors. Many, and this I know as a lawyer, we're not that, our credit system, the loans that most banks will offer are not made for risk-heavy enterprises. Okay, so definitely it's a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder effort. And what I'm trying to share with you are, as I said, going back, what I've been seeing recently and in my lifetime as a product of this desire, this dream of becoming an innovation nation. The new developments that are being brewed in Congress to again push some more this agenda. And my observations based on personal experience, my own career trajectory, and what I see among my friends. So many of my batchmates, whether in high school or in colleges, are now elsewhere. Many are here in government, but very few. Although we have one batch, I have one friend, a batchmate in the Philippine Science High School, who I think she's in the internet, who's a very is a celebrated engineer who is involved with Netflix. I think she developed the algorithm that they use to, if I'm not mistaken, to measure interest in particular shows. Anne Aaron, my batchmate, you can look her up. So perhaps that's the typical story. Filipinos are very talented, but we cannot harness our talents so far locally as much as we should. And perhaps this prescription will help that, and that's what I chose to speak on, not only because I know very at a personal level these things, because I also have witnessed or learned certain developments that I could share with our audience here in SEAMEO INNOTECH and online as to what the Philippine government, Philippines is trying to do on this matter. So with that, I end this brief presentation, sharing. I thank SEAMEO INNOTECH for inviting me, Director Maha. I hope what I shared would be useful for our audience, for whatever you're doing. And I think there's a Q&A part. I'll be happy to discuss and address your questions. Thank you very much.